Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. In this one I want to review Star Wars Kenobi Episode 1. So there are 2 episodes out today, but I did want to do the review separately, so the Episode 2 review will be later on. I haven't watched it yet, so I have just the review after each episode. So yeah, overall, I went into this show with, you know, reasonable expectations, but not over the top. I hadn't been looking crazy into like the trailers, interviews, information about it, because to some degree I just had confidence that, okay, they have the key actors that you need. It looks like they're focusing it around like a few key events that sound like they're really, really solid. They don't have too many episodes. I think it's 6 episodes overall. This looks like it will deliver. I'm pretty confident in this one. No real worries going in. So actually watching the episode, I actually thought it worked really, really well. Obviously it's our first episode, so it's sort of just the intro. It's sort of, you know, Obi-Wan's kind of call to action. But it's interesting how kind of surprising it is what they do here, in that I was not expecting to see Bail Organa. I was not expecting to see quite a bit of focus on young Leia. And for that to sort of actually be the thing that gets Obi-Wan back in the game effectively, that's what gets him to act, is not because something happened to Luke, who he's actually watching over, but because he has to go off-world to investigate Leia being kidnapped. And it makes complete sense because they have set up that Obi-Wan and Bail are quite close. This is why the whole episode 4, you know, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi type thing kind of, you know, exists basically. She knows about that through her father having the connection with Obi-Wan. So that's very cool, and it makes me kind of wonder, like, oh, are we going to see Obi-Wan meet Leia later on? That sounds pretty exciting, even if it's just for like a brief scene. For her, when she gives that message, to actually know who she's kind of talking to, like at least to some degree. So that was a really, really pleasant surprise. But for that moment, getting Obi-Wan back in the fight to work, you have to, I suppose, explore scenes with him not wanting to get back in the fight, because it's set 10 years later. So straight away I was kind of like, oh, like this is going to be a little bit tricky, because I think people have a tendency to be quite down on these type of, you know, the character kind of unwilling to act, just I think purely based off episode 8 and what they did with Luke in episode 8 and how badly done it was. Here though, it's that same general type of plot done well, because like the recap, basically giving you like a full recap of the prequels, did such an excellent job at getting across, and even just the little nightmare that they have towards the start of the episode with him, fantastic job at getting across. There's a lot going through Obi-Wan's mind about what happened with Anakin in the end, the situation in the galaxy at this point, him having to protect Luke, even though, you know, Owen of course doesn't really want him to go anywhere near Luke, and even Owen is bringing up, you know, Obi-Wan's failures with Anakin. And even just the little subtle thing that I was hoping they would reference, and that is he can't communicate with Qui-Gon. Now, we don't really get the full scope of like how much training he has or hasn't done. I think it would be sort of meaningful for it to have not worked up to now, but maybe by the end of the series we'll actually get Obi-Wan making the connection with Qui-Gon. That would just be, I think, so impactful of this show kind of being about Obi-Wan rediscovering what he's basically trying to accomplish on Tatooine. That he says to Owen that, like, okay, the boy needs to be trained, but otherwise it feels like everything that he's about is just staying hidden. Stay out of the way. We've lost. Very negative. So it kind of feels a bit weird almost that like he has this hope in Luke. And I think it's just that, okay, this is what I've been tasked with. This is what I have to do. But I don't know how confident he necessarily is that if he does train Luke, that will change things. And I think what this series is going to be about, is that when he eventually meets Vader, discovers the truth with Anakin, and maybe gets just a realization that, like, what Padme said, and I like that they used that recap scene, there's still good in him. Padme says that to Obi-Wan. He's the one who knows that someone still has hope for him. He tries to do that during those scenes with Vader, but he can't do it. That it's impossible for Obi-Wan to get through to Anakin because of just the way their relationship has gone. But he maybe does see a glimmer of hope, and maybe he puts that on, like Luke, that, like, maybe his son can be the one in the future to bring that to the surface again, and that's Obi-Wan's hope for the future. And like that discovery combined with maybe a reconnection with Qui-Gon, and something significant being said by Qui-Gon, will be, I think, it's just a really nice way to round off what feels like basically one of the final gaps in Obi-Wan's story, in that it seems like there's going to be a few novels kind of coming out in recent times that will cover more of the sort of new sections of, like, his early life as a Padawan, covering some of that stuff. But in terms of, like, older Obi-Wan, this feels like the final gap to fill in, and I think they're doing a really good job with it so far. And like I said, they ran the risk of this maybe feeling a little bit like the Luke in Episode 8 problem, but I think it really worked here, in that you really, truly understood the character. Whereas with Luke in Episode 8, they relied on, like, a 5-second flashback scene to give you the kind of justification for why Luke Skywalker, of all characters, feels negative about the Jedi and, like, wanting to act. You get Obi-Wan and the situation that he's in. And I think they did a great job at just showing sort of that it's been 10 years, so he kind of just has this day-to-day routine where he seems to earn money by just helping to cut up the meat that they get from, like, sand sharks. That was kind of cool. And just those little moments of the guy in front of him complains a little bit about the pay being less than it usually is, and he gets sort of beaten up a little bit, and Obi-Wan sort of wants to step in. There's still that spark in him, but he knows not to do it because it would draw attention to himself. I think the more significant scene was definitely him meeting that young Jedi. He only seemed about 20, so, like, I'm guessing he was probably a Padawan from from the kind of Clone Wars era, Order 66. So very young. He knows who Obi-Wan is, of course, and it's like, we can do it, join up and, like, try and accomplish something. But Obi-Wan is just like, no, we've lost. The best thing you can do is put that lightsaber away, bury it in the middle of the desert. And so when you end with Obi-Wan basically going to the middle of the desert to get his and Anakin's lightsaber out, that was great, because I almost forgot that Obi-Wan has Anakin's lightsaber in this scene. I was expecting, like, okay, here's the box with his lightsaber, but then I ended up kind of lingering more on, Anakin's saber is there, and it makes sense because this is ultimately the one he gives to Luke. So really great connections there with how that scene worked, and that Obi-Wan's back, here it is, because obviously it's kind of almost like this happy moment for Obi-Wan in Episode 4 when he does hand that lightsaber over to Luke. So seeing it there was really good. But just that quick scene with the young Jedi, and how that was the one above all else that really served to highlight the idea of, Obi-Wan is in a bad place at this point, especially when you consider that, like, Obi-Wan is the one who basically sent the message that probably saved a lot of the Jedi who were still out there. He gave the reverse message of, like, stay away from the temple, don't gather in the temple. So very, very significant to see that, and especially him to, right as he's sort of about to go on the mission, to see that same young Jedi dead, and what the Inquisitors have, like, done to him. Really impactful, and just kind of highlighting that, he Obi-Wan in a way, like, has a little bit to make up for now as well. And that's why the scenes with Bail, both the holo communication with Breha and Bail, and just Obi-Wan kind of saying, I'm not the man I used to be, was kind of really impactful. It kind of hit. And especially then when Bail arrives on Tatooine himself and has the conversation with Obi-Wan of, like, we all made mistakes, that it's not just you. basically kind of a lot of people in the Republic, Jedi, politicians, everyone, made mistakes that allowed what happened to happen. Because ultimately, like, this is the situation. It's the same criticism I've had of a lot of what, like, Luke says in Episode 8. It's like, it's not all on just, you know, the failure of the Jedi and stuff like that. A lot of it is also that, you know, it was Palpatine's incredible plan. They were bested ultimately by something they they were never able to fully quite figure out, and so they were completely blindsided. And that's why I think the scene of, like, almost the random scene that they include here at the start of Order 66 is quite interesting. I'm guessing the significance of it is that I'm assuming one of the girls there was a young Reva. And because otherwise it feels like you already showed sort of, I think that a little bit of recap showed Order 66 briefly. So was there a need to do a brand new scene when the Jedi Master didn't seem particularly important? The show didn't obviously make the connection that Reva and that Jedi are the same, that youngling are the same, but I'm assuming that is the case. So I'm wondering, will we, like, return to that scene to highlight potentially, okay, if that is Reva, from that moment and them escaping from their dead master, how were they then captured? Who, like, grabbed them, captured them? Was it Anakin? That would be quite interesting. Which I suppose leads us into the Inquisitors and how they kind of did them here. Because for a lot of people, I suppose, if you haven't played Jedi Fallen Order or haven't watched Star Wars Rebels, this is probably going to be your first experience with the Inquisitors. And I think they did a good job at introducing them. They know about the Jedi Order, and while they haven't revealed the whole idea that they're, like, you know, basically captured, brainwashed, turned Jedi, I think the implication is sort of already there, that that's why they know Jedi so well and know what to do. But that's going to be a cool reveal when we get to it, because I assume with the likes of Reva, we're going to be playing with that. And especially what makes, I think, her character so interesting is that she does seem to want to focus in on Obi-Wan specifically for some reason. Now, I believe from other material, like press stuff, I think we know that she does at some point at least report directly to Vader. So I don't know if it's just that, like, she is his favorite or something like that, and so he has maybe mentioned Obi-Wan specifically to her, and she's just keeping that from the Grand Inquisitor and the others. I'm not sure. Or is it something kind of more personal that maybe relates to how she was turned? Because again, that's the thing with the Inquisitors, is that they're all former Jedi. So for them to turn dark, you really had to, like, play on their emotions to get them to go completely the other direction. So I'm wondering what exactly the detail is, because effectively, from what I've seen in the press, is that the three people they've been putting out, the three actors they've been putting out, are basically Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Reva. So they feel like the main characters, because the Grand Inquisitor is more connected to Kanan. It makes sense that he's here because he's the lead Inquisitor, but he's not going to have, I suppose, that much to do in the overall grand scheme of things. The other Inquisitor, I'm guessing, will just be there to be involved in more action scenes, maybe be an Inquisitor that we can kill if we absolutely have to, potentially. I haven't looked into yet if that one is the same as any one we experience later on, so I'm not sure if I'm just misremembering anything, but still, I like that dynamic, that she is clearly acting a little bit differently than most of the Inquisitors do, in that they're trying to just do probably more of a normal investigation and a little bit of intimidation, but she is pushing it to, like, a heavy degree of threatening people and really playing on, like, the emotions to just create this situation that is, like, it would force almost any Jedi to come out of hiding because she's threatening innocents and so on. And it seems like the others aren't quite willing to go that far, and they're criticizing her for doing just that. So that is actually an interesting dynamic to see how it goes, in that, like, is that being informed by Vader, or is that just more of a personal thing herself? That will be good to see. Because they're really getting across. She is driven to get Obi-Wan to the point where, like, it's a little bit of a important reveal that she has orchestrated or hired people to kidnap Leia. Not because she knows the inherent importance of Leia, but just that she has made the connection by investigating Obi-Wan that, oh, Bail and Obi-Wan sort of know each other. So Bail obviously, I guess, would contact Obi-Wan potentially and bring him back into play. And that's kind of interesting because it now puts her on the lead of, she's like this close to like Luke, and now she has basically captured Leia, but she doesn't know the full details of it. And I'm wondering if we're really going to go in depth on this character and maybe do an arc where we begin to turn her back or have her doubt the Inquisitors and the Empire. She might come across some secrets, and it would be a little bit of an interesting way to go with things for her to maybe discover the truth, but be, return to the light side of the Force at the end. And so, she's not going to tell anyone, but it allows you to make this character feel more important than just being a Inquisitor who otherwise probably just needs to be killed off in a fight at some point. So, overall, so far, I'm liking pretty much everything that they're doing here. I think it really works. So, Leia. I suppose, really quickly before Leia, Luke. Basically, the only scene we get is the one we saw in the trailer of him kind of, he goes missing for like a couple of seconds, but he's actually just jumped up on top of the house to act like he's, driving a speeder or a pod racer. And I like the scene because it's Obi-Wan watching this happen, and it's that connection, obviously, of even though he's been raised for 10 years here, in different, similar but different situations to Anakin, you can see the Anakin in Luke. And I like then when we cut to Leia, you see the same with her, that even though she is being raised by Bail and Breha on Alderaan in like royalty basically, she still has that adventurous spirit that Anakin has, in that she's getting people to act in her place almost. She's rushing off into the forest to hide in the trees. She's messing with droids. So you can see like the little aspects of like the potential for her to go down the path of Padme and be a good senator, but also where the I suppose aggressive negotiations are going to come for, because Leia can handle herself as well. So that was really good, and I like that they let the young actress have scenes where she gets to speak quite a bit, and she's kind of savage in them, in terms of like taking down her cousin like that, despite being sort of hurt by what her cousin says to her, that, oh, you're not a real Organa, they hide you here because they don't want the galaxy to know about you. But it made that scene with Bail really, really impactful, where he seems to, while her mother seems to want to maybe shut down a little bit of the adventurous side of her, not in a bad way, but just calm it down a little bit. You don't need to run off at all times. Bail more sort of embraces that side of her, because she doesn't seek to be a senator, so he views that as being actually a good sign that she'll make for a better senator, because she is skeptical of the process, and so that might mean when she enters politics she'll make a change. Very, very much kind of like the way Padme is presented in that regard, of not just wanting to do things in the normal way and be the typical senator, like the guy at the start of the scene where Bail wants to discuss a little bit of politics, but he's like, no, I'm here to drink, not to discuss politics. And they're discussing like slavery as well, so really highlighting how corrupt a lot of the politicians are, and that there's hope for Leia to be better. So that was really good, and just him emphasizing that, like, no, you are a true Organa, don't let anyone say that to you. She is kidnapped. I'm not sure what the details are about who these guys are. They just kind of seem like thugs in that they didn't seem super skilled, and that like Leia evaded them for more time than you'd maybe expect to. But they still got her in the end. It's obviously revealed that Reva is orchestrating it, so you know that's fine. I think that's about everything I wanted to talk about here, because like I said, it's very much an intro episode. It's Obi-Wan by the end is going out to investigate. He's just about to leave the planet to investigate what's happening with Leia, and obviously there's I suppose a bit of a trap prepared, but from what we know, Reva is sort of acting on her own, so it should just be potentially her on her own. But the others are maybe beginning to become suspicious of her and taking these wild actions, so the other Inquisitors might be around also. It will be interesting to see when Obi-Wan is forced into action for the first time how good or not he is. I think we know from trailers he does use a blaster at times, so he's going to hold back on using the lightsaber until the last possible minute. But when he does, will he be on top form? Because if he can't do the connection to Qui-Gon, it feels like, okay, has he done the training but it just isn't working now? Or is it just never worked? Or is his connection to the Force affected by everything going on? So that might affect his skill, especially if he hasn't been in action in 10 years. That will be interesting to see. Probably in the next episode, I assume there'll be at least a little bit of action. But overall, I really enjoyed the first episode. I like that there's a lot of different dynamics going on. No Vader in the first episode, but I think that's fine. Vader is definitely this kind of character you have to be sort of careful with, and he's probably the one that I'm the most interested to see as we go on. And he makes the connection with Obi-Wan. Do we see like a more like emotional Vader, or do they keep him the same? Because obviously when they meet again in episode 4, there's definitely a sense where like he's not super emotional about it, but he's like driven to pursue Obi-Wan. But it feels like they're old enough at that point where they just both know this is the final confrontation. Here though, I'm guessing they'll have to portray Vader as being a little bit more emotional about like confronting Obi-Wan for the first time after what happened. He would probably be blaming Obi-Wan a lot for him not maybe being in as good of a position as he otherwise would have, and everything that's gone on. Like he effectively is blaming like Obi-Wan for Padme and so on. So I think you kind of need to do that, and because of that, I am interested to see if we do get like Obi-Wan seeing like some remnant of Anakin in Vader, or not, because I think we know we're going to at some point get like some sort of a Clone Wars flashback scene, and I'm wondering like how they're going to use that effectively, and like will Ahsoka be involved or not. I can see them just for the sake of like the focus here being on Obi-Wan and Anakin / Vader, then maybe doing it like set before Ahsoka enters the fray, just because it is the Kenobi show, and while like Obi-Wan and Ahsoka get on well and have a good dynamic, of those three, the Obi-Wan Ahsoka connection is probably the one where it's like not the most important of them. So it'd be nice to see, very nice, but is it fully needed? That's where I'm maybe not sure, and I think just Obi-Wan and Anakin is probably what's best. And especially if it is maybe set at the point where they're wearing like the little bits of clone armor, that would be so cool to see that in live action. But yeah, as you can see, I'm super positive on the show after the first episode, yeah, I'm pretty much just gonna edit this one, get it uploaded, and in the process of that, I suppose watch the second episode. So the review for episode 2 will be coming later on today, hopefully not too long after the first review goes up. But other than that, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.